What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. As always, this is Gregor Outdoors. Thank you for joining me on another episode. Today's going to be something a little bit different than normal. I'm going to be sitting down with Matthew Monjaras from Impact Outdoors, New Mexico. I've hunted with him in the past. He's a great guy. He's doing a lot of great things for conservation in New Mexico and throughout the Southwest. So I'm going to talk to him about what's going on. About conservation, about water issues in the Southwest, and how we can try to enhance those things, and really talk about what he's doing. So hopefully you guys like this. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and make sure you guys go follow Impact Outdoors on Instagram as well. I'll put their link here up on the screen. I hope you guys enjoy the podcast episode.
Hey,
how are you?
doing great, man. Doing good.
All right.
I have my professional tech assistant in here, Dana. She's trying to get everything going for recording real quick.
Okay.
Sorry about the confusion on the time.
Yeah, no problem.
I don't know what adult male doesn't know that that's a 3-hour difference.
I'll chalk it up to the travel.
That must be it. So
everybody, I want to thank Matthew Monjaras for joining me today. I want to let you introduce yourself, kind of tell us about what Impact Outdoors is, what the mission is, and what you guys are aiming to do as far as conservation in New Mexico, and then eventually, hopefully, spread that throughout other areas of the Southwest and the rest of the country. So without further ado, Mr. Matthew Monjaras from Impact Outdoors.
yeah. Thank you. So Impact Outdoors, our mission is to impact communities through education, conservation, and meaningful outdoor opportunities. And so we focus on a lot of educational youth stewardship programming around New Mexico. We work with local landowners to improve habitats. And when we have our youth out, our habitat are making those improvements on the land. We set all of our lesson plans to next generation science standards. And what that means is we want our youth to think about the outdoors through the eyes of a biologist. We want them to question the natural world. We want them to recognize things that worked in their habitat improvements, things that didn't work, organisms that they didn't intend to benefit from the improvements that they're making on the land. And we really just want them to question the things that they come across in the environment so that they get engaged in them. Our youth return to these sites of improvement to do mentored hunts with various conservation mentors across New Mexico. And some of these private lands that we do our outdoor classroom opportunities at, or that we have our outdoor classroom opportunities at, are also some of the locations that we host our veterans. So the other side of it is that at Impact Outdoors, we want to say thank you to our nation's veterans. So we take them out into the field with hunting and angling opportunities all over the state. We host them. We provide great opportunities for successful harvest because we are up to 97,000 acres of private land across New Mexico for veteran opportunity. And in many cases, we are the only hunt entity or game management that occurs on those properties. So this all kind of came about because I would be trying to get a veteran into the field who might be facing a bunch of obstacles. But when you get in on public land and somebody's already in that blind, that doesn't mean that they're going to take the chime or change what they're doing when they beat you to the blind.
Right.
So our private land opportunities mean that we allow for our birds to rest when they need to rest. We do not over pressure the game on our various properties, and we really take hunting with a conservation mindset of respecting the habitat, improving the habitat, understanding the birds, understanding co-relationships that exist between organisms in that environment, and just kind of we just take a little bit of a different walk. We don't want to be overwhelming in the habitats that we're involved in. And so what that means, though, is that if you've never shot a Rio Grande turkey and you're going on a Rio Grande turkey hunt with us, you're probably going to have a really good chance that you're going to be able to successfully harvest that first Rio Grande turkey with us, because I can tell you how many people hunted that spring or even last fall or the spring before that. So we do a lot of stuff with our veterans. We focus a lot on our youth, and that's really intentional. We want to, right now in our communities across New Mexico and across the Southwest, even the United States, there are certain roles that need to be filled currently for conservation. And so by engaging our nation's veterans, active military in a conservation minded approach to hunting, we also create conservation minded leadership that our communities need now. And so I find that our veterans fall into a lot of these leadership roles now. And as for our youth, we are building a foundation of conservation minded leaders for the future, for my son's generation, for the generation between that. And so I think it's really important that if there's a need for something here now, we fill it. And we're also thinking about where these folks need to be when it comes time. So,
right, and that's where, like you said, you guys are setting a foundation for the conservation-minded individuals for the future. Because, I mean, if we look at it as far as hunting and fishing and Second Amendment, I don't want to make this a political thing, of course, but you look at these things and the relationship that we are having with them, and it doesn't seem like our generation is kind of passing that on to the next generation for them to enjoy. And I mean, things like what you're doing is a great way to get the youth and get that mindset back in, so that we don't end up losing the battle in conservation. And like I said, you are laying that foundational stone where everybody else can use that as a model. So
yeah, I think, a lot of people think about a hunting group or a nonprofit that hunts, and they just consider them just a group that takes somebody out for a one-time gig. That's not what we want to do. In fact, a lot of times I think the hunt is the lure that engages our attendees. I used to think that if I could get a veteran, which it is a big deal, but if I used to think that the biggest trophy I could accomplish was to have a veteran return to take another veteran into the field. Over the last year and a half, we have really been hitting these workshops hard. This spring, we had a veteran-focused wetlands workshop. We did 12 sites of improvement. We worked on water retention. But what I was learning, or as we progress with these workshops, is that sometimes people don't feel comfortable behind a duck call. Sometimes people don't know the space in between decoys or those type of things that guarantee a better hunt. But because they were in our nation's military, or they are, our nation's military, they can do pretty much anything. And so if you don't feel comfortable behind a goose call, but you're an outstanding welder, we have a place for you in this community. And when you come out and you work on water retention and you have to weld some new equipment, or you're working on Canada goose nesting barrels, you find a place in this group of veterans that are coming back. And this group of veterans knows that not only is the water retention going to help our landowner, not only is the habitat going to improve the flyway, but they're also increasing access for other veterans. When they improve a habitat that our veterans attend, it improves future veterans' harvest rates and understanding of the habitats we're involved in.
right.
And so I think a lot of it is like, I used to think that the hunt was the biggest aspect, but the more I find that we can create stewardship and engagement and conservation minded from our veterans, we seem to have better retention rates. We have people coming back because now they feel like they have a purpose in this community of veterans serving veterans.
Right. And that's kind of how I got involved with you, and how I met you, and kind of got involved with the organization is through a friend of mine that I was served in the military with. And I went on a hunt with you guys, and posted a video. You guys can look at that. I'll put it up here on the screen so you guys can check that out after, and I'll also link it down below in the description so you guys can check that out. But that's how I got linked up with you guys, and being able to see not only the camaraderie that you guys develop between veterans. That I mean, I drove from California to New Mexico to see a friend of mine that I hadn't seen in 10 years through your organization, and then I met a handful, 15 other veterans that I had no other interaction with prior to that, and we all bonded through waterfowl, and that's what makes an organization like you guys, and what waterfowl is it's just a group of passionate individuals together, coming together for a commonality. And that's I mean, what you're doing for the veterans, and I can't say that enough, because you're getting them out of the mindset of being alone and not having that support system, like you said. And I know, and you can attest to, a lot of veterans when they get out of the military, or even while they're in the military, don't have that support system. So in order to get into that, I mean, what you're doing is incredible. So
Yeah, I think the commonality is that if you're in love with like the sound of whistling wings coming in on you and breaking fog in the morning, and if thinking about being in the duck blind, and it's not just always a one-on-one kind of hunt. There's like three or four of us in a blind. We're all sharing different stories, different laughs, but that uniting theme is that when those ducks cup up and they start to work in, it demands your presence. And I think that that's a big part for me, but I also know that it's a big part for our veterans, because a lot of our veterans are living in past moments.
mm-hmm.
And I think that's fair for anyone who's been through any sort of trauma or hardship in life. Like sometimes that can take over the present. And so when those ducks cup up and they come in just perfect, you could look across the blind and see that everyone is caught in that moment. And so waterfowl, I think, is the powerful thing that got me into realizing, all these relationships that were happening around me. The natural world is involved with itself. There are something that impacts this over here, and
Right. Yep.
whoever thought that snails were this driving force between the canvasback I was seeing. And so for me, I think waterfowl's the big thing that gets us to connected, but it's the community that keeps us.
Right. And it's interesting because I honestly didn't get into waterfowl hunting until probably about 4 years ago. And to be honest with you, the amount of experiences that I've had in the last 4 years is absolutely incredible. The people that I've been able to interact with and meet just through going and hunting a duck. But that's not exactly what it is either. It's being out there and meeting those individuals and experiencing early mornings and late afternoons, and like you said, all the little organisms that make up waterfowling, or just the conservation in itself. You never really think about all the other aspects there are to it. You just, a lot of people just see the hunt, and that's not all there is to it. You know what I mean? And you see a lot of programs out there, and I just, being able to interact through waterfowl has really brought something different to my life. And to be honest, I know a lot of people that get into waterfowl hunting, and I'm sure you can attest to this. It becomes an addiction, and like I said, it's not about the hunt; it's about the experience altogether. The getting up early and introducing your children to it, and it's just one of those things that I don't think can be replicated any other way.
And and that thirst for the hunt, like I know that there are stages of becoming a sportsman. And I know that there were times in my life where being the best waterfowler in New Mexico was like important. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
how many birds can I harvest this year? How much better can I do that? And because of that growth phase in my life, I kept many habitats a secret. And unfortunately, over the last 3 or 5 years, I've watched marshland after marshland disappear across New Mexico.
Right.
of course the Southwest is facing these issues with water resource, but there's the hunt gets us drawn in, and we get really drawn into like being the best or harvesting that new species, or it's really easy for a lot of young individuals or just people getting into it to not think that they had a successful hunt season because they didn't see the piles of birds. They
Right.
didn't see the high numbers in that. But as I've grown as a sportsman, I've realized that looking at limits just limits your potential, because they're just like the program. There are so many other assets that go into a successful hunt, or what I would deem a successful hunt. I've had great hunts where we killed lots of birds, but they just weren't that great of a hunt.
Right.
And so as a program, I've made it really our just driving thing is to work on habitat. How can we as sportsmen have a give and take relationship with the land? I think a lot of sportsmen today, they feel like, well, I bought my license, I buy my ammunition, I support Pittman Robinson, so I am conservation. And the reality is when was the last time you planted a tree?
Right.
When was
It
yeah.
doesn't stop at purchasing a license and
Oh,
going out there and do, what are you doing to promote the sustainable resources that are vastly disappearing, like you said, throughout the entire Southwest. I mean, there's
yeah.
got to be something more to it, and you're hitting it right on the head right there.
Yeah, it's a big it's like just eating the icing off a cake. Like there's so many great things about getting together to work on water retention and macroinvertebrate development. Like there are so many great things to be able to like engage youth on a pond that our veterans rehabbed so that they can understand and have an image of what real water health, water quality looks like.
Right.
It's like, we have vets who are coming out to work on a handicap access blind and work on water retention for a landowner. And then 3 months later, we have our youth out there collecting water samples. We have them testing to see what macroinvertebrates are in the water. They're recognizing what a pollutant intolerant macroinvertebrate looks like, and also recognizing what an intolerant pollutant macroinvertebrate looks like, because they're in the same pond. They're actually seeing that. So I think to just go to the hunt and just be the hunt, it feels sometimes like almost like being a sponge. Like the whole world is taken and the whole world just feels like everything can be bought.
Right.
And so I think if I challenge anyone who hasn't been involved in a habitat restoration that, you go out and you do a habitat restoration, and I guarantee you it's going to give more meaning, more significance. You involve your family in habitat and conservation, it's going to give your life more meaning.
And like you said, it'll give it more meaning, and then in the future, you do things like what you guys are doing, and then in the future, you can bring those youth, you can bring those veterans to those same exact areas and see the benefits of what you guys are producing. And it's more waterfowl in the area, more not just waterfowl, but more birds in general, more wildlife, more turkeys, more coyotes. I mean, it doesn't end with just waterfowl. When you improve a habitat, it improves all wildlife, even down to the microorganisms, like you said. So
Yeah, and this year, I don't want to go too long on it, but this year when we had our veterans out for that water retention project, we thought initially that we were going in just to work on water retention, help out our landowner, work on habitat, work on these islands because the birds needed roosting options. They needed something to get away from predation. It was a series of 3 workshops. And during those 3 workshops, on about our second workshop, New Mexico was seeing the largest recorded wildfire in New Mexico history. The Hermit's Peak fire met with the Calf Canyon fire and burned more area than encompassing area than we've ever seen before. And one of our properties is in that watershed that comes down through the Pecos. And so as these workshops were progressing, we had an intention to begin with, but as we saw the reality of what this carbon kill off could potentially do to the whole Pecos Valley, it's kind of insult to injury because we've lost a lot of marshland in that area. So when the birds can't find it there, I always think, well, if they can't find it there, but they can find it on one of our properties 5 miles down, then at least they find it there.
Right.
If we lose one here, we got one here. And so we really started to work with the intention of filling that pond with clean water before we got that carbon filled acequia water that could come in. And so it started to dawn on me that if we filled this pond before we saw the carbon, this pond would almost be a micro environment or an image of what the Pecos Health used to be.
What it should be.
What it should be. And so we just did our youth data collection on the Pecos. We had 40 citizen monitors out. We want to engage our youth to think like biologists. And they were out, 40 of them on the bank of the Pecos with nets trying to catch macroinvertebrates. That same stretch of river, 4 weeks prior, 5 weeks prior, you could have flipped any rock and found caddisflies or mayflies or stoneflies. With 40 data collecting individuals along the river, kids and adults alike, they managed to collect only 2 black fly larvae. Black fly larvae are one of the most pollutant tolerant species of macroinvertebrates that you can find. The kids managed to catch 3 minnows. And so it was devastating to see that. And it was kind of doom and gloom for the kids to realize the magnitude of what this carbon kill off that we were thinking might occur had occurred. And then those kids left that site where there was no life to speak of pretty much. And we talked about how, algae and aquatic plants feed the macroinvertebrates and how the macroinvertebrates feed the fish and the birds. And all of a sudden, if the meat of your sandwich is gone, what does that mean for the environment?
Right.
And so those kids left with like a kind of gloomy outlook, which is the outlook that I've had recently on just the environment and the resources in the Southwest and fire.
A whole new understanding.
Everything. Yes. And then they left that site and they went to the pond that our veterans worked so hard on, and it was like, how did we knew this was a possibility and it happened. And the carbon kill off that we're seeing in that area is for I traveled with the ditch boss for 35 miles of the Pecos River, which normally has such a biodiverse environment, only to find carbon kill off. I mean, the carbon in the river felt so thick that you could float on it. And so for those kids to show up to that restoration site that our veterans did and to just find this micro environment that was present before, it was like allowing them to see what the potential of that valley truly is.
Right.
And so I'm glad that there was that. It almost felt like we were in a race with our vets to finish that project, to get, we had a valve that was seeping. We had a blockage through one of the pipes that goes underneath the dam. We had to pull out heavy equipment. Our veterans did 550 hours of volunteer time for habitat and for all those other things, but it became something larger. It became something of, like one of them said, it was like a biblical level because we were saving 2 of everything to put back into the Pecos.
Right.
And I would love it if I would see even other community members or the acequia itself recognize that, maybe a warning to all these agricultural
there's an issue. Right.
That there's an issue. Like, don't just put this stuff in, but everyone did. And so in 35 miles of riding rivers and ponds and what used to be existing waterfowl habitat, we have one site of improvement that's alive. And it's
which is incredible.
Which is the site that our veterans took that time to work on. And so I think it's fair to say from the data that we collected, seeing what we have in that pond, as that pond rises and as we get some water that doesn't have so much turbidity in it, then we'll start to release that water back into the Pecos watershed. First few years, it's not going to matter because that carbon is so thick, nothing's really going to happen. It might take in some places. But I think it's fair to say that from this one project that our veterans completed, we are creating a rebirth for future generations in the Pecos. A lot of times, game and fish won't even restock an area until 10 years after. So that means that my son has a silent river for 10 years. Well, if what our veterans just accomplished out there,
helps lessen that burden.
Yeah, I mean, it could be potentially the first site that Game and Fish restocks because of their efforts.
Right.
And it's bigger than me. It's bigger than one individual. It takes a community to recognize when conservation is needed and it's a necessity.
And what do you think kind of led to the I mean, obviously I know the fire and all the destruction that came with it, but what do you think led to the is it mismanagement, or is it just lack of awareness, or just the not I don't want to paint a picture or something.
I think it is what it is you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And so that's fair to say, because 16 miles from that location used to be one of the most biodiverse marshlands in the whole Southwest. And I could say that without a doubt. I mean, I've harvested 32 different species of waterfowl in New Mexico. There's not many places in the world where you could see biodiversity like that. And New Mexico is number 2 for bird biodiversity in the nation.
Right.
And so I think you don't know what you don't know. And so by me keeping that biodiverse location 16 miles from our most recent site of improvement a secret, I've let that location disappear. If I would have said, man, I'm killing, or I'm harvesting lesser scalp right after pintail, and I'm seeing all 3 species of teal, and I'm seeing dabblers, and I'm seeing divers,
Barrow's goldeneye, like we experienced.
Everything.
Right.
And I, instead of raising awareness or like promoting that place as a waterfowl management area or as a refuge, even, we've lost it. And so I was the only cheerleader for this location because I kept it such a big secret.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have a farmer up the road who doesn't know that carbon is going to kill everything in their pond, an old timer could have told them, oh, when we had a fire back in 2000, my alfalfa grew like crazy. Sure, like your alfalfa could, because of that carbon influx, that you got. But
look at everything else that is taken out as a result of that.
Yeah, so I think we kind of pick and choose like what we want to retain. And so sometimes like farmers hear that carbon is a good thing, so carbon's a good thing, until you realize that like it's choked everything out of your aquatic habitat and killed.
And that kind of brings me to a topic I want to touch on a little bit is you look at like you said, we're having the same thing here in Southern California with the Salton Sea, which is one of the premier destinations in Southern California for water sports, for fishing, for all of that. And because of agricultural runoff and military munitions and everything else that has been flooded into that sea, it's now just it's such a toxic area that nothing there's no aquatic vegetation. There's nothing can survive in that water. There's no fish anymore. You'll get an occasional tilapia, but the salinity of that water is just so high, and the toxicity is so high because of the agricultural runoff that we're running into issues now where birds are bypassing that area entirely, and it's an important stop, like New Mexico and the Pecos River and that whole valley is for New Mexico. And when you don't have that, where are the birds supposed to go to at that point? And when we're facing the drastic drought issues that we're having all throughout the Southwest, when you take away one of the largest watersheds in Southern California, where are we sending these birds? And I mean, how do we fix that? Because the answers haven't been provided. And nothing is really being done about it.
Well, what I found from the Middle Rio, which is a bit different than the Pecos, but what I found is that the reason why we have the bird biodiversity that we do is because those birds used to be able to come here to find 100% of the habitat they needed. And demands from farming, demands from economic gain, greed, everybody's got their fingers in the water.
Yep.
And the last thing on the list is the birds. And so when we're making, and I can speak on, to New Mexico at least, that when as a state we're making decisions to only put in 13% of allocated water in our WMAs, and you got 3 WMAs in the Middle Rio that used to see 100%, and now combined they only have 38% of 300% of water.
It's incredible.
How many? When is it that we intentionally made the duck stamp because we recognize that our migratory birds belong to everyone and they didn't belong to just one state border. So when you have California not recognizing what the Salton Sea means to the birds, and when you have New Mexico not allocating water that the birds need and have to have, how many years in a row can we make those type of decisions between we see federal, like the whole West?
I lost you for a second.
All right, folks. So we had some technical difficulties. This will be the first part of a two-part podcast series with Mr. Matthew Monjaras from Impact Outdoors. Hope you guys like this video. Hopefully, you guys are going to get something from these two videos I got coming with him. And if you want to help support Impact Outdoors in any way possible, I'll leave a QR code up on the screen here, and I'll also link all of their information down below in the description. It's a 501c nonprofit organization, so they run strictly off of donations. So if you guys are willing to donate, hit that link or scan that QR code, help them out. And like I said, go follow them on Instagram as well. Hope you guys like the video. Stay tuned for part 2. And until next time, thank you. And make sure you guys are doing your part in conservation as hunters and fishermen and women. The birds and the wildlife need it, and so do the natural resources. So appreciate you guys. And until next time, like I said, see you.